Good day to you, Professor Morton. I love calling you Professor Morton.
Do you
I used
really?
to,
Not
yeah,
many
yeah,
people do it.
yeah. Don't they? How rude!
No,
How rude!
actually, I actually told one of my students one time, I don't really answer to that. We Australians like to keep it a bit casual. So,
True,
actually,
true.
you know what? This is true. The greatest compliment I get is when I have one of my students go, "Hey, Daz," and I go, "Yeah, now we're friends."
I have a similar kind of perspective on being called Mr. Matthews. So when maybe when I treat you, maybe you go to a hotel or you get on board an aeroplane to fly somewhere. People will say, "Good afternoon, Mister Matthews," and my first
Mm.
instinct is to look around for my father.
That's right.
Um,
Right. Yeah.
um,
Yeah, for sure.
I haven't
Well,
I haven't quite stepped into being Mister Matthews, but anyhow.
well, soon it might be Dr. Matthews, and then you'll own
Well,
it.
maybe I'll have your experience of, feeling like, gee, I wish people had just called me Simon.
Yeah, that's
Uh,
right.
so, tell me,
Mm,
what's something that human beings do quite a lot that we're
mm.
just not designed to do?
Oh, you know what? I would say death scroll and stare at a screen for countless hours.
Oh,
Sure,
yeah,
we're not.
okay,
I don't think we're
okay,
designed to do that at all.
yeah. Death scroll, as in, you got
Mm,
your smartphone, and
yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, okay, and stare at a screen for hours. Absolutely, yeah. And I think you and I have, perhaps talked a little in the past about some of the disadvantages of that, some of the health related impacts of behaviours like that. So
Mm,
that's probably very true, but it's actually not the one I'm thinking of. I'm thinking of something different that
mm,
we do all the time that we're just not designed to do.
mm,
And in fact, you do it a lot. I do it a lot.
mm,
You and I both just did it recently
mm.
because we saw each other in Dallas, Texas, at the conference of the American College of Lifestyle Medicine. To
Yes.
get there, of course, we
Mm,
had to fly in an aeroplane. And the thing
mm,
that human beings just aren't designed to do is to hurtle around the planet at, maybe 35, 36,000 feet of altitude at
mm,
nearly 1,000 kilometres an hour, which
mm.
is actually pretty fast. We're
Pretty quick.
just not designed to do that.
Mm,
There are a lot of conveniences with air travel like that. We can get places that we want to go pretty quickly and smoothly. Um, but there are disadvantages too, and one of the major disadvantages is the experience of jet lag.
mm.
Um, now, did you get jet lag going
I
to
got.
Dallas?
I am terrible for jet lag. Yep, I got
Right.
it, and I don't like it. And I would love to learn how to avoid it, or at least deal with it a whole lot better, because it is true. I mean, this is a modern phenomenon, isn't it? It's never in
Absolutely.
history have we been
Yeah,
able to
yeah.
travel quick enough to get in a different time zone. So
Absolutely. No
yeah,
one got jet lag. Jet lag was simply unknown until roughly the early 1950s, I think.
yeah, yeah,
Before that, we had propeller aircraft transport. So
yes,
there were some longer air routes like Sydney to London, but it would
mm,
take several days to
yes,
accomplish.
yes.
Um,
You know,
whereas now,
on the flight across from Sydney to Dallas, you actually go across the international date line, and I've a
exactly
couple of
right.
times on a flight I've actually caught the exact moment, and I've called up and I've looked at the little plane doing its little dot across the line, and then doosh, it hits the international date line. I think, whoa, I just gained a day. But it's also
Yeah.
very depressing because the other direction you lose a day. So,
Exactly
yeah, this
right.
is a
Exactly right.
fascinating modern problem, really,
Yeah,
in many ways.
absolutely. So, how do you? What's your own personal experience of jet lag? How do you know when you're experiencing it?
Oh, well, you just feel lousy and you feel like you're not in your right self. Um, I found it's interesting going to Dallas because what's worse is when we travel from Sydney to the other side of the United States, because it's almost polar opposite time zones, and I don't know what to do in that context. I'm just completely thrown. I remember actually going there for a conference one time. It was only 4 days, and I don't think I slept the whole time, because I'd be like, during the I was interested in the content, so I remember sitting in the meetings and engaging with them, and I felt a bit spacey, but relatively alert. And then I think, I just can't wait home. I really need to, because I'm getting anxious almost about the fact that I haven't slept. And then I thought, I'll get back to the hotel. I'll have a solid sleep. And then, boom, it's party time. My brain's like all wired. And I have this vivid memory one time of it was like day 3. And I don't think I'd slept at all. And then 3 a.m., I'm just walking around. So I was in Walmart purchasing Nerf guns for my kids to take home. I'm not good. I'm not good with jet lag. Don't like it.
It's not a pleasant experience, is it? So it's of course jet lag is that temporary disconnect between your internal body clock and the actual time, the clock time at your new destination. And people experience various things, including that sense of being wide awake at odd times of the day, but also just that general kind of malaise. I think you said you feel kind of lousy. A bit disoriented or spacey, tired. Sometimes you can get headachy. And sometimes you can be, this is my experience of jet lag, sometimes you can be walking around feeling relatively okay, and suddenly you just get this crushing fatigue. And the pressure to sleep is just unbearable. And it feels like the only thing that you can do right in that moment is just find a quiet, dark corner, lie down, go to sleep, and that's it. And of course, as you adjust to that new time zone, those symptoms tend to diminish. So we already know that human beings are designed for travel, well, quite frankly, at about walking pace. About 4 or 5 kilometres, 4 or 5 kilometres now. By the way, here's an interesting aside. Do you know what your own walking pace is?
Not my exact walking space, but I would say around the 5 kilometres an hour.
5 kilometres an hour. Okay, yeah. I tend to walk at about 6, maybe.
You got long legs.
I've got longer legs. About 6 kilometres an hour. But there is a lot of research that links longevity and walking speed as you age. So as you get older, the extent to which you can maintain a good walking speed predicts your lifespan. And interestingly, the actual walking speed is very slow. It's in the order, I think, of 2.5 to 3 kilometres an hour. So it's not a fast walking speed.
I remember reading an article on that, and they said that's the speed of the Grim Reaper. So if you can walk faster than that, you can keep him at bay, keep him in your tracks.
Yeah, absolutely. But that's maybe that's a story for another time. So we've got this idea that first of all, we're moving much faster than we're designed to move, but secondly, some of the elements of airline travel are just a little bit hostile to us. Where our cabin environment is higher than normal, it's somewhere between 8 and 10,000 feet. The air is particularly dry. The humidity is very, very low inside an airliner, and also lots of other things change. Our diet tends to change quite suddenly when we travel by air and so on. So there are a lot of factors that lead to this additional, quite substantial strain on our bodies. You've already observed that going in one direction is worse than the other, and it happens whether or not you cross the international date line. So crossing the date line, of course, is only a feature of travelling between, say, Australia or New Zealand and the United States. There are some other places as well, but generally speaking, that's where you'll cross the date line. Anywhere you travel east to west, you're likely to experience more jet lag. And the reason's really interesting. A day is 24 hours in duration, But our circadian rhythm is ever so slightly longer than that. It's like
Yes.
24.2 to 24.5 hours. That's a normal human circadian rhythm. And so that means that your body naturally just has this slight tendency to stay
Elongate.
up, a little longer. So when you're traveling west, you tend to extend the day and delay your sleep. And that's just a slightly better alignment with your circadian rhythm. When you travel east, you shorten the day, and you have to try and force sleep earlier, and therefore you wake up earlier than your body really wants to, and that's against your body's natural rhythm. So the adjustment is much harder. And there are actually ways of calculating jet lag. Do you know what they are?
No.
Very, very
But
simple.
a quick question before you go
Yeah,
on.
absolutely.
Is that different? And I certainly experienced that when lengthening my day is a lot easier than shortening my day. Is that for everyone? I wonder if there's any research showing that your chronobiology type
Yeah.
influences that, because I wonder whether early risers cope better. I haven't seen any science on this, so I don't know if you know or familiar with any research, but yeah, I've often wondered, because I'm not a particularly early riser. I don't think I'm a lark, but I'm not an owl. I'm somewhere in the middle. But I have wondered whether that influences it as well.
Interesting. You and I could do an experiment with an N of 2.
That's all right.
So
There.
I tend to be an early riser. Yeah, but I mean, I certainly still experience jet lag. But it would be interesting to understand the relative impact. I suspect, without knowing this, and I haven't researched this part of it, I suspect that the answer to that question would be yes. There are individual variations based on individual chronobiology, and that whole idea of personalised healthcare and understanding at that level is something that we're stepping more and more into in lifestyle medicine now.
I do know people who cope very well with jet lag. Like, they have a little protocol they might follow, I have noticed that they are the early rise type. Whereas I find I really struggle to go west when I come back home from the United States. Actually, it's like a day after I feel normal again.
Yeah. And I have a similar experience too, generally going west to east. So here's the interesting thing. On this particular conference that we just met at, you were west to east initially. I was east. You were east. You were west to east initially. I was east to west initially, and then we did the reverse going home. So you had theoretically the slightly easier adjustment going to the conference. I had the slightly harder adjustment going to the conference, and then the reverse after we left. There is a way of calculating about how long it's going to take you to recover, and it's to do with the number of time zones you cross. So if you're traveling in an eastward direction for you, Sydney to LA, say, then it's about 2/3 the number of time zones that you cross. So, for example, if you end up crossing 6 time zones going going in an eastward direction, west to east, then you would expect about 4 days recovery. In other words, it's about 2/3. The equation is about 2/3. If your travel is westward, then it's about half. So if you cross 6 time zones, you would expect about 3 days recovery. So it's not hugely different, but it is just a little bit. But let's go back to talk about the international time zone, the international daylight, I should say, because that's this introduces a bit of a wild card, which is pretty interesting. The date, even though you think that you stay awake and you watch the little plane cross the date line and you go, wow, nothing actually happens, because of course internally your body clock has no idea.
Yes.
Typically by this time the shutters of the windows are down on the aeroplane, and your body is just doing its thing. It has no idea what time of day or night it is. So it really pays no attention to that. When you cross about 8 time zones or maybe a little more, going in an eastward direction, you actually have to change the methodology that you use and the calculation. So traveling, if you go, say, from Sydney to Dallas, that's about 16 time zones in a eastward direction.
Yes.
Which is actually the same as about 8 time zones in a westward direction.
Mm.
And that's the methodology that you should apply. So there are some, we're going to talk about this shortly, there are some strategies that we can use to try and offset jet lag, particularly some lifestyle medicine strategies. And if you're doing that type of distance, which involves crossing the date line and a double-digit number of time zones, you're better to apply the westward strategies than the eastward strategies. So something to bear in mind.
All right, give me some strategies, brother.
All right.
I'm ready to learn.
Lifestyle medicine to the rescue, as always. And lifestyle medicine does offer us some really great ideas for how we can do this. Do you want to work through them one by one?
Sure.
Yeah. Which one do you want to start with?
What you think is the most profound, the most impactful?
Oh, gee, that's a good question. Well, okay, the most impactful one is actually not strictly speaking a lifestyle medicine strategy. The most impactful strategy is actually to do with light exposure. So it's kind of, we might say this is lifestyle medicine adjacent rather than one of the necessarily the pillars of lifestyle medicine. But the timing of your light exposure when you're trying to manage jet lag is really important. If you're traveling eastward, as you were, Sydney to Dallas, then the first day that you arrive, you should avoid bright light as much as you can between about daybreak, dawn, and the middle of the day, local time. So applying that, you arrive at your destination. Typically you arrive, if you're flying from Sydney to the US, typically you arrive in the evening in the US. Then you go to your hotel, maybe you go to bed. When you wake up in the morning, between 6 a.m. and noon, try to avoid bright light. Then, as soon as noon hits, try to expose yourself to bright light. Try to get as much bright light into your eyes as you can. If you can't avoid the bright light in the morning, just wear dark glasses and perhaps even try and be indoors as much as you possibly can. Then on the subsequent days, all you do is advance that light avoidance and exposure times earlier by 1 to 2 hours each day. So that means then, day 2, you're avoiding bright light, say between about 4:30 a.m. and 10:30 a.m. The day after, 3 a.m. and 9 a.m. and so on. And pretty soon you can see how the avoidance
shift
of light exposure, it just lines up with your normal sleeping hours. If you're traveling westward, the best thing you can do is avoid bright light in the morning, expose yourself to bright light in the evening. Same as always, wear sunglasses if you can to really cut the amount of light getting to your eyes. And then it goes the opposite way. So on subsequent days, delay your light avoidance by about 1 to 2 hours each day. And then, pretty soon that'll sink back into your regular times. Outdoor natural light is much better than indoor light. We've talked about that in the past. The amount of actual light that you get from outdoor light versus indoor lighting. If you have really extreme time zone changes, 15, 16 zones, you can use, some light therapy devices, the sorts of things that have produced, say, more than 10,000 lux of light to try and help that. if you need light exposure for westward travel, then just turn on bright lamps and get as much light as you possibly can. So light therapy, if we can call it that, or managing your exposure to light, is the most effective, because that directly impacts your circadian adjustment. The light is detected by your pineal gland in your brain, and that's what helps regulate your circadian rhythm. So there's the most effective strategy. Lifestyle medicine offers some great ideas as well. First of all, when it comes to nutrition, start, if you can start doing this, start adjusting your meal timing 2 or 3 days before to better match your destination time zone. So if you can, that's going to mean advancing your meal times just a little bit. Now, there's a downside to this as well, and that is that unsyncing yourself too much in your local time can have an equally disorienting effect. So some of these strategies help to a point, and then perhaps they start becoming hindrances. Avoid heavy meals close to your departure time, and avoid heavy meals while you're flying. Make sure you stay super well hydrated. As soon as you're traveling, as soon as you get in that aeroplane, try and adjust your meal times according to your destination time zone. So, for example, if you if you get in the plane in Sydney, whatever time it is in Sydney, think about what time it is when you arrive in Dallas. And if that's breakfast time, make that the meal that you have as far as you possibly can.
It's interesting you mentioned these two things, because I think obviously the aeroplane companies are onto this information, and particularly some of the more modern airlines now. They actually are very intentional about those two strategies.
Absolutely.
And of course, we know that light exposure, nutrition, very powerful determinants of circadian entrainment. But I was thinking, getting on the plane, I think it was A300, the new ones,
the super big one, or
I think it was one of them.
So the super big ones are 380, but the really super modern airliner that a lot of airlines, well, there's two. There's a Boeing 787 and there's an Airbus A350, which are both super modern airliners.
Whichever one I was on, I did notice that it modulates the light throughout the course, and it was almost, the sun was going. It felt like the sun was setting. They've done very well in terms of think. Oh, and I'm thinking, wait a sec, it's only like whatever it was in the afternoon. And the other thing I did notice is that I'd had lunch, and then I got on the plane because I was flying out shortly after lunch, and then they were serving again, and they said this was like dinner or whatever it might have been.
Yeah.
And so obviously they're very much au fait with the research showing that these light exposure, nutrition are very important, entrainment methods.
Yeah. So did you fly with a particular airline from which we received no endorsement whatsoever? That's based in Australia and has a red kangaroo as its icon. Yeah, okay. So that was that was probably a 787 that you were flying on that adjusts the internal lighting. Do you know, years ago, when I was coming back actually from the US, I was in the airport lounge in Los Angeles, and I got talking to this guy who was a Swedish American. That's his job. He designs the internal lighting of aircraft. Yeah, fascinating discussion.
I'm interested that you did pick up on hydration, because I that is one thing that I do. I'm very intentional about, just because I know that the air is dry, and I'm also interested. You mentioned about the altitude, because it's right. It's not the compression in the cabin isn't to sea level, is it?
It's not sea level.
I remember I looked on my watch has altitude features on it, and I actually thought, I wonder what altitude we're at. And silly me thinking it was going to register. And then I realized that, that we're at 40,000 feet, whatever it was. And then I realized, wait a second, it's working on barometric pressure here, so it should register as sea level. But it didn't. It said it was actually about 8,000 or 9,000 feet. And so I thought, so you're right. There's that altitude aspect to the fact that you're in this little tunnel thing as well.
Exactly right. exactly
Yeah.
right. So there's
Yeah.
already a bit of there's already some odd, subtle
Yes.
pressures on your body.
Yeah.
Interestingly, so the 787 aircraft that we were just talking about does a
Mm.
slightly better job of that because it keeps the cabin altitude at about 8,000 feet instead of the traditional kind of 10,000 feet in older jet aircraft.
Right.
So it's just that helps to make it just a little bit easier.
Mm.
Um, so you're absolutely right about hydration. This, of course, has implications for seat selection. So if you're going to be drinking a lot of
Yes.
water,
Yeah.
pick
Get an
pick
eye.
an aisle seat. Exactly
Mm.
right. So you can use the bathroom frequently. And we should say this very clearly: hydration should not ever include beer when you're flying to those sorts of far-flung places, because
Mm.
alcohol impairs your sleep quality and it worsens your hydration levels. So the
Mm.
best thing to do, if you do drink alcohol from time to time, the best thing to do is avoid alcohol altogether while you're flying, and
Mm.
simply get as much water as you possibly can. Limit
Mm.
your caffeine if you're a coffee drinker, of course. Make sure that your caffeine intake aligns with your destination waking hours. If you've got food choices on the plane, avoid those kind of heavy, stodgy sort of meals. Choose some lighter meals. Most aircraft you can get fresh fruit if you ask. It's not necessarily served to you, but if you ask a flight attendant, do you have an apple or a banana or something like that, you'll be able to get that. So there's some nutrition tips while you're eating. When you arrive at your destination, eat a really substantial breakfast in that local time, and
Mm.
that's a really great tip too. So not just not just a bowl of cornflakes or something like that, but a substantial breakfast in your destination time as soon as you get there. Even this is a little counterintuitive. Even if you're not hungry, timing meals to your local schedule
Mm.
can help here. And even if you eat smaller amounts than you might normally eat, what you're trying to do is give signals to your body that we're in a
Yes.
new place, and this is what we're doing now. And of
Mm.
course, avoid that late evening eating, which tends to disrupt your circadian alignment. When it
Mm.
comes to physical activity, keep moving. That's the best thing that you can do.
Mm. Mm.
But move as much as you can, including while you're flying. Lots of movement that you can do seated in your seat, but you can also get up, move around, stretch your legs, and so on. Keep your exercise schedule up as much as you can, and keep it aligned with the time when you would usually do it. Even if that means sometimes initially doing it much earlier in the morning or much later at night than you might do it. If you happen to have a layover on a flight, that's a great opportunity to do a bit extra movement and get your blood flowing. There's a little bit of nuance here. If you're travelling eastward, as you were, Sydney to Dallas, exercise outdoors in the morning light.
Mm.
If you're travelling westward, exercise outdoors in the evening light, and both of
Mm.
those things just help your circadian adjustment a little bit. And generally speaking, avoiding super vigorous evening exercise is probably helpful as well. Um, and again, this is one of those areas where we need to strike a balance. Yes, there are some strategies that help, but there's nothing that does the job perfectly, and everything then becomes a trade-off between the marginal benefit that you receive and the marginal disadvantage you may get from that particular strategy.
Mm.
So there is
Just
there is an element, to go back to your earlier question about
mm.
are individuals different? There is an element, I think, to
Yeah. Yeah.
uncovering over time what
Mm.
personally works for you.
Mm. I actually, just to comment on the physical activity piece, I do find it a lot harder, particularly to arrive when we go to the United States from Australia, to get up earlier than what I'm accustomed, and then
Yeah,
exercise, and you don't feel right. So, one thing I'm quite intentional about is now's not the time to train for fitness. It's really time. I sort of
Yeah,
I don't have
yeah.
my head. I'm trying to improve my fitness here. It's more about just
You
moving,
just
just
maintaining.
getting the
Yeah,
body. Yeah, yeah,
exactly right.
yeah.
Exactly right. Yeah, yeah, yeah. If you're preparing to run a half marathon as soon as you get back home,
Mm,
that's probably not the greatest time to be doing this sort of travel, because it will
mm,
really interfere
it
with your
does.
training schedule. Yeah,
Mm,
yeah.
mm,
When it comes to the lifestyle medicine pillar of sleep, the
mm,
gradual shifts in sleep towards your destination time over, 2 to 3 or 3 to 4 days help here. This means a bit of closer attention, because you can't just fall into that kind of automatic rhythm of, oh, it's 10 o'clock, so I go to sleep. Um,
mm,
what you've got to try and do is actively manage changes in your sleep time. Try to avoid as much as you possibly can any sleep debt before you travel. So don't go into
mm.
your travel already feeling tired, and of course don't adjust your home sleep schedule too much before you travel. There is some evidence to suggest that just slightly, going to bed a little bit later or a little bit earlier, depending on your direction of travel, can help. But if you do too much of that, you start giving yourself a disadvantage at the beginning, and you go into your travel feeling tired, which is
Mm.
not what you want.
That's it. That is interesting. I was actually going to ask that question because I have wondered how much early preparation, before you depart, is of value, and it does. It's disruptive. When you start changing your existing patterns, then it's sort of disrupting those few days leading up to when you're
Absolutely.
going. So it's a hard
Absolutely.
one.
Yeah.
I've sort of
Yeah.
adopted it from taking the approach that, well, look, when I get there, it's going to be tough anyway. Let's just keep doing what I do in the lead up, and then
Just,
manage as
yeah.
best as I can.
You can, there is some evidence to suggest you can make small adjustments before you go. But again, we're talking about incremental effects and incremental impacts on an activity that human beings weren't designed to do.
Yeah,
So, and this is what we can't ever get away from. We're engaging in an activity that
yeah,
biologically we're not designed for. So, all of these strategies are just ways of endeavouring to mitigate the effects,
yeah,
knowing at the same time that we can't ever. There is nothing that's a silver bullet cure here
yeah,
for jet lag.
yeah.
When it comes to the plane, of course, sleep only if it's nighttime at your destination. That's a good tip. So try and, when you're on the plane, try and, some people just sort of nod off to sleep with with movement. Try not to do that. If you're someone who just gets soothed into sleep by movement, try and stay awake if it's not nighttime at your destination. When you do want to sleep, you can use earplugs and an eye mask. Avoid screens, of course, all the usual ideas. Um, resist, once you're there, resist napping if you can avoid that, and try and resume a local sleep schedule as quickly as you can. And then the usual advice about sleep: cool, dark, and quiet. Uh,
Mm,
you know, and one of the nice things actually about hotel travel is that you can often adjust the thermostat of the air conditioner in the room to be quite cool. So if you can do that, do that. Make your
mm,
room cool, dark, and quiet. When it
mm,
comes to managing stress, all the usual things still apply. Doing some regulated breathing exercise can be really helpful. Um, do whatever planning you can to minimise cognitive load and cognitive demand, both during and after travel. Avoid, put your passport in a place where you know it is, so that you don't get to immigration to go, oh my goodness, where's my passport, and
yeah,
create that sort of stress for yourself. Um, do the same after you arrive. Social connection, of course, doesn't really change. We know that being connected socially is good for us. We know that being with people is good for us. So, engage as you normally would, even though you might feel tired, even though you might not feel like you're the life of the party. Staying connected and socially engaged is really helpful. and of course, the same advice about risky substances. Avoid if you happen to be someone who drinks alcohol, then certainly avoid that while you're travelling, and consider it carefully on either end of your travel as well, because of its disrupting effects. And interestingly, I'm going to talk a little bit about, just briefly, about melatonin. Melatonin's become a pretty popular topic for sleep management and adjustment of sleep schedules. I'm certainly not going to give any advice about using melatonin. I will acknowledge that a lot of people use it and consider using it. Generally speaking, from what I've read about melatonin, a low dose is best only at your destination bedtime, and for as short a time as you possibly can. One of the people who I listen to a lot about sleep is Dr. Matthew Walker, and some of our listeners might listen to his podcast as well about sleep. And he has a series on melatonin. Interestingly, one thing I learned from that is melatonin is also a potent anti-inflammatory medication, which I didn't know. But quite apart from that, probably I would say speak to your healthcare practitioner about melatonin. Listen to Matt Walker's podcast if you want to understand the science behind melatonin, and consider whether that's a strategy that's going to be useful for you or not. Personally, I've never used melatonin to try and make that adjustment. I use some of the other strategies that we're talking about here. So in summary, the best ones are, first of all, manage light exposure. That's far and away the most potent strategy that you can use. Secondly, nutrition. Thirdly, exercise and activity, and of course, sleep as part of that. All the other things we should just do as we usually do.
One question too, because and I've noticed that often when you get on the plane, and this is I intentionally tried this, and I don't know whether it helps or not, but at the moment I step onto the plane, I try and, from a psychological perspective, think of it as the time that I'm about to arrive in. And I've noticed that on the flight, sometimes they'll say, "Oh, if you'd like to reset your watches and your clocks, the time is at our destination."
At your destination, yeah.
And I do wonder whether there's an element. I try and engage that aspect, but I do think to myself, it's now 4 p.m. or it's now this, and I think it might help a little bit, but I don't deal with jet lag well, so maybe it doesn't.
Well, I suspect it probably does, because all of those strategies that we were talking about involve trying to shift to your destination local time as early as you possibly can, shifting meal times, shifting sleep times, and so on. Because the mechanism here is that we're trying to do things that encourage our underlying circadian rhythm to make that shift efficiently. If you fight against that by, for example, going to sleep when it feels like you should go to sleep based on your current time, then you're delaying that adjustment to your new time zone. So mentally adjusting yourself, cognitively thinking, okay, now it's such and such a time, this is what I'm going to do, this is what I would be doing now. Anything you can do to help your body make that adjustment, I think, is good. And at the end of the day, we still have to say, this is not an activity that human beings are designed to do. We really are pushing against our own nature when we travel internationally across multiple time zones. And so all of the strategies that we can think of are simply things to give our biology and circadian rhythm a helping hand as much as we can. And it's still going to take some time to adjust.
Yeah, good advice. And and I think that I have always struggled with it, and I've tried many different things, and I think that maybe I definitely think that light exposure and nutrition, I've noticed, and being physically active on in the morning in the new destination, they've certainly been very helpful to me. But wow, it'd be great to be able to fix that problem. And maybe this is. I think one thing we did learn from Zoom is how to do this a whole lot better. And so maybe screens aren't all bad. And I do appreciate the fact that now.
Absolutely, yeah. And we're also on the cusp, of course, of some airlines are starting to introduce new flight routes that are extraordinarily long. For example, Sydney to New York, which I think is scheduled to be 21 hours or something. Quite frankly, I think I would probably prefer to spend 21 hours in the burning pits of hell than 21 hours locked inside a little aluminium tube being hurtled across the sky at 1,000 kilometres an hour. I appreciate there's the idea of getting to your destination as quickly and as efficiently with minimal changes. I kind of get that, but honestly, I would not want to make that. I would not want to make that flight. Coupled up to a couple time zones, we don't really need to worry about. There's no particular strategy that you need to put in place. So even, for example, going Sydney to Perth in Australia, there's nothing you particularly need to do to make that adjustment. You can just your body will adjust itself in about as much time as it would take you to get focused on all these strategies. But but beyond that, we can do some things that can support us and can assist us, and we need to recognise that at the end of the day, there's still an adjustment required.
Very good. Well, thank you for the tips and tricks, brother. I'll be sure to employ them, and I hope that I cope better next time.
I'll expect a report.